Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Music Masterclass for today, December 17th, 2020. And I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and Hanukkah and all other holidays. Because as I've mentioned, I'm going to take the next couple weeks off, so I won't be here with you on Christmas Eve. So this is my opportunity to give you the season's greetings. So, um, I am going to start by doing a little demonstration. I think this is probably going to be the usual format I'm going to do with these because I usually have something on my mind I want to demonstrate, talk about, and I'll do that and then start launching into some people's submissions and things. And I'm going to keep up with the chat the best I can. And thanks. It's so great to see so many people here checking in. So I see all sorts of places here. So, this is great. All right, so yeah, what I'm going to do is show you this arrangement, and it's not much of an arrangement. I'm sort of continuing with some of the thoughts that I was expressing last week about writing small, thinking small, and then expanding. And I'll tell you where this thought that what this demonstration that I'm going to show you is kind of about. It is the idea that when we go to sing Christmas carols or any sort of familiar song, typically we all know the melody and we all sing the thing in unison. And then that's, well, that's fine, but it's a little disappointing. Now, if you have someone who can accompany on guitar or piano and you've got a chord chart for them or written out accompaniment, that's great too. But often that's not the case, right? Especially with Christmas carols, if you think about the whole caroling thing, not that anyone is really doing a whole lot of that this year. So you end up with a lot of unaccompanied singing, and uh, it's either in unison because that's all anyone can think to do, or maybe someone tries to maybe improvise some sort of harmony part, or maybe they sang in a choir and remembered how the alto part that they learned for the thing went if they did this in a choir. But if you are singing in a choir, probably you have like a four-part arrangement, and then that takes work to kind of get together. It's not something you can just sort of do. So what I'm thinking here is I want to solve a kind of a practical problem with that. What if you have a whole bunch of people who know the melody and you have one person or you, if you're the singer, or, it doesn't have to be voice, it could just as easily be instrumental. Maybe one person wants to take the time to learn a harmony part so that they can provide some form of harmony. So what I've been and a lot of people could just do that by ear, just sort of harmonize by ear. But when you do that, you typically get very simple harmonizations just based on the 1, 4, and 5 chord. So what I've done is I've taken this piece that I've only heard a couple times before, and I saw it in a Christmas fake book years ago and played through it and said, "Huh, that's interesting." And then I put it aside. And then actually, my wife Kari mentioned it just last week as like one of her favorite songs, one that she thought would make a good tune for me to think about doing something with. And so I did. And what I've done is this song is normally also really based on 3, maybe 4 chords: a 1 chord, a 4 chord, a 5 chord, and there is a 6 chord that is pretty traditionally used. And that's about it. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to play this. I think I'm going to play it. You're going to see chord symbols here, but you're not going to hear any chord symbols because I'll turn them off. I think I'm going to turn them back on for now. As when I play it through, and then I'll talk about what I'm doing. What my idea here is, if everyone knows the melody and just one person or 1 or 2 people learn this harmony part, it can really make it really interesting. I've then gone an extra step by adding a bass part, which is just the roots of the chords, basically. That's what I think I'm capable of doing. So let me make sure I've got nothing muted. Okay, good. So let's hear what this thing sounds. Okay, I'm going to stop it there because I'm aware that there's an issue when I'm using these AirPods that the pitch is not correct. Well, I'm just kind of not worried about it. I don't know if anyone has perfect pitch and can tell me if that was actually a G or not. Is that a G or D? Is that a D? My melodica will tell me. Okay, I guess it's good. All right, so sorry for the interruption. Okay, so out. Hopefully that means. Okay, yeah, I don't know what that means, but okay. So the what I have here, and I had it play back the chords just so you could hear it with the chords also. But normally, what I'm trying to do here is I'm going for something that works at some level with a really minimal thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off the chords, and I'm also going to mute the bass. Well, actually, I'm not going to mute the bass first. I'm going to mute the harmony part first. So now all we're going to hear now is the melody note and the bass part. And I'm going to do this because I actually think this is a really useful way of it as sort of an ear training thing to get used to learning a song in terms of its melody and the bass line that is basically just formed by the roots. You'll see there's nothing in here but the roots, or if I actually specify an inversion, which I think I do somewhere, like I have a G with a D in the bass, so literally there's a D in the bass, right? But other than that, the only place where I do anything even remotely melodic is this final boo-doo-doo-dum, doo-dum, which I just wanted to do. So let's hear this now. This is just the melody and the bass. And when I say as an ear training exercise, it's really useful to get used to trying to hear the harmony, to have your ears fill in the harmony from just that. It comes with experience, but it's something worth doing. So let's listen to it this way. So when you hear that, you can definitely get some version of the harmony. You can hear some version of the harmony from that. So yeah, so the deal is, I guess I'm going to do this. When I do this, it's going to mess things up, but it's going to bother, I think, everyone a little bit. What I have learned, well, I'll tell you what I learned. What I've learned is that when I have the AirPods in and I'm trying to share my screen audio, something goes weird and things become a step off, and it also becomes a little out of sync. And I think it's the processing that's required to deal with these AirPods. So as much as I like them for a lot of purposes, it is a little bit disconcerting. So let me remove these, and then I'm going to have to reset my audio so just give me a minute, but it'll be worth it. You probably can't hear me talking anymore, but don't worry. So I'm talking. Whether or not you can hear me is another matter. No, I think you can probably still hear me. Actually, you just wouldn't be able to hear the audio from the computer until this is fixed. All right. So yeah. So let's see if this comes out differently. Is this sounding better to you guys? Did that sound more in key? My guess is that yes, it is. And if not, whatever. We'll just go on. But this is something that I have learned. So all right. So when when we hear just the melody and the bass line, we're really hearing most of what we should need to understand the harmony, because things like this 1 6 2 5 at the beginning, 1 1 6 2 5, that bass line, really just that little bit should, um, we should be able to fill in the rest. Our ears have heard 1 6 2 5 often enough that just by hearing the bass notes, our ear can. Oh, you can't hear the playback, so I didn't do. Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to hit the. Sorry. Where's the button? That's the. Unpause source previews. What the hell? Um, there's This is the thing. There's supposed to be a button that I push that updates now that I've changed the audio. Sorry about this. Always something, right? So let's see if we have audio back. You all have to let me know. Is the audio back now? Is the question. I would like to think so. But there used to be a button that I would have to press to tell it to go live with my changes. All is good? All right, good. Excellent. Cool. So, as I was saying, the ear can kind of fill in harmony based on what it's heard before. And when I say it can, I mean you get better at doing this with experience. The more experience that you have with harmony, with hearing chord progressions and thinking about them, the more experience you have with that, the better your ear will be at filling in, understanding what's going on harmonically while just hearing the bass line. And the bass line plus the melody is a lot, because often the melody note is not the root of the chord. So when we hear a G in the bass and a D in the melody, we're really hearing 2/3 of the triad, right? The only thing we're not hearing is the third. So you just don't know if it's a G major or G minor chord until you get a little deeper into the song, right? Because it might have been in the key of G minor if you didn't know better. So but often the melody note is the third of the chord. So it's actually filling in what needs to happen. Like here, we have the E is the bass note and the G in the melody. Well, now we're hearing the root and the third of that chord. There's no doubt in the ear's mind that this is an E minor we're hearing. In this measure here, we have an A minor, and the melody note is just A at the beginning of the measure, but by the end of the measure, we hear the C. So we've heard the full triad by the time this measure is finished. This idea that with only 2 notes you can often say a lot is really the thing that I'm kind of getting at here. If you're trying to create some version where you can sing a song with just the melody and just a harmony part, then knowing that 2 notes can often be enough is great. And if you pick one of them to be the root, well, then we know we're getting the root of the chord. The only problem is that sometimes you will be missing the third, and the third is really a. I would rather hear the fifth and the third than the fifth and the root, if that makes sense. If the melody is the fifth, I would kind of rather hear just the fifth and the third together, and my ear can fill in the root, than just hear the fifth and the root and have my ear have to fill in that third. That can work also, but it is definitely worth really putting this emphasis on the thirds of your chords. So what I did was I had the bass always cover the roots, because I don't want my harmony part to have to worry about the roots. I want my harmony parts to sound good. So what I'm going to do now is play this. I'm going to play the whole thing, because I didn't play the whole thing with just melody and bass yet, I don't think. So I'm going to do that. Let's hear it. So that sounds like something. It is disappointing to me in a few places because there's no thirds on some of the chords. Like in this measure, I call that an A7 chord, and my harmony part has a C sharp. But you didn't get to hear it, right? You didn't get to hear it because I was muting that harmony part. If all we have to go on is the melody and the bass note, the third was missing. Similarly, the E7 chord here, we never really got to hear that G sharp either. Now, maybe the ear would have filled that in from this, because this in the key of A would be 2, 5, 1, or 2, 5, 1 in the key of A. So the ear might have filled in that G sharp there because it's understanding this 2, 5, 1. And again, it really depends on your experience level with this. But this is why learning to think this way can really be valuable, to train your ears to be able to make a lot out of a little is what I'm going at with all this. So in any case, my ear might have filled in that G sharp. It probably doesn't fill in that C sharp all by itself. And there's a few other places where, like here, when all I hear is the A and I'm not getting to hear the C sharp, it's a little disappointing that I missed this lovely A7 that I added. This was not the original chord here. The original chord here would have been just a D chord, or the typical chord, I should say. Who knows, original? This song's like 500 years old. 500 years, yeah. It's hundreds of years old. No one really knows who wrote it. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to turn off the bass, mute the bass, but unmute the harmony part. And I think what you'll decide here, or what I certainly feel, and maybe you can decide for yourself, is if you're only going to hear two parts, I think I'd rather hear these two parts, the part that I actually wrote here. This is written using all the techniques I talked about a couple weeks ago, of including, notes that are basically a third below the melody, a third below the melody, or a sixth below the melody, and focusing primarily on that. But using some other intervals where it makes sense, like here where the melody note was the root of the chord, I went ahead and put the fifth of the chord below it. I could have gone all the way down to the third down here, but then I have an octave leap. Whatever. Yeah, it's good either way. So let's hear it this way now, just my melody and my harmony part. So again, if everyone knows the melody, and I don't think everyone does know. I mean, I barely knew this melody before last week. But if you're with a group of people and some of them know the melody, then all you have to do is teach one person this harmony part, or you learn this harmony part, and suddenly you can create something that sounds a lot more interesting than just everyone singing the melody in unison. But then on top of that, if one person can handle just singing these roots, then we get what I actually intended here, which is now the full chord. So that, I feel, I mean, this is not that familiar of a song to many of us. I'm extrapolating, but yeah, the fact that I don't hear it often, I imagine a lot of people don't hear it often. But assuming that people know the melody, and you do this with whatever other song you might want to do it with, then by just learning a harmony part and maybe this very simplified bass part, which is really just roots, you can get 3-part harmony, which sounds really nice, with a fraction of the effort that it would take to actually learn a 4-part SATB arrangement. Because I guarantee the bass part wouldn't be this simple. And then you'd have 2 different harmony parts to worry about. And now everyone's singing and trying to synchronize with everyone else. It's going to be much harder to get something like that together. So by keeping it simple, where it's just a melody and one harmony part, and then, okay, a bass, and we can handle that. Or maybe someone has a guitar and they play the guitar chords. Or just plunk out those bass notes on a piano if they're not comfortable playing full chord symbols and all. So this is a way of creating harmony by really focusing on the essential tones here. And so there were a couple places, like when I only played it with the 2 voices here, this measure here, I called this G with a B in the bass. Well, when the B was missing in the bass, I got that situation that I said I don't like all that much, which is a root and a fifth only. So when I didn't have the bass in there, I didn't love the sound of this measure. If I go in and mute that bass again, right, this was kind of disappointing. I never got to hear the third in there. I'm just hearing roots and fifths. Open the interval of a perfect fifth, the interval of a perfect fourth. So it was a little disappointing without that bass note. So if I knew I was never going to have a bass on this, I might have second-guessed that decision to actually use an inversion here. I might have put the chord in root position and let my harmony part be on a B, like I did at the beginning. So that's something to consider. If you know you're only going to have 2 parts, you really kind of want to avoid these open fifths. Open fifth meaning just root and fifth. And so I can call this an open fifth, the root on the bottom, fifth on top. I guess I could call this an open fourth, but it's the same idea. It's just a root and a fifth, but the other way around, right? So if you know you're only going to have 2 parts, you probably don't want to do that very often. But if you know you're going to have full chord accompaniment, you can get away with this a little more often. If you know you're either going to have a bass note in there to fill out the chord or a guitar or someone else playing the chords, you can get away with these open fifths a little more. But even so, they're not going to be as nice most of the time as your intervals of a third below the melody and interval of a sixth below the melody. That's still going to be your go-to. So before I put this piece aside, I just want to point out, like everything that I do harmonically on this piece, again, the original version is really mostly just about 1s and 4s and 5s, but I created a lot more circle of fifth stuff, 1, 6, 2, 5, and I use this. This 1 chord in second inversion as kind of part of my 5 measure. And then instead of another 1, 6, 2, 5, I realized it works actually really well with this passing diminished chord. That really kind of added a lot of interest to me by making this be a diminished chord, and I just know that that's another way of getting to 2. And then again, now here's 3, 6, 2, 5 for variety. And I made my 6th a dominant 7th, and I made my 2 a dominant 7th because the melody supports it. The melody didn't support that so much in the first measure. I couldn't have a dominant 2 here because the C natural in the melody, so I couldn't have an A7. I could have done it here, but it doesn't really fit the whole thing with a passing diminished chord. That passing diminished chord really likes to go to a minor chord. I can just say that I believe that to be true. I can try changing this to a C sharp and see what we think. Yeah, it's okay too, but then it would have repeated the C sharp, which I didn't need. But here I really liked the sound of the A7. The other interesting thing to me that I did, well, here's another place where I'm another quick 2-5-1 going to this B minor. You'll see I'm using these secondary 2-5-1s a lot, which is something I talked about in my Silent Night demonstration, which hopefully most of you watched, and if not, go find it on YouTube. But this, I have to point out my very favorite chord, right? This minor 4 chord, right? We're in the key of G. No one does that chord. The usual chord here is just a D chord. So this would have been a D, and this would have been an F sharp. So this is the usual. And that's the usual thing. And then this would have been in root position. So that would have been a G. This is the usual chord. And that's fine. But again, I just really like the sounds of the kinds of, I think that's the only relevant change. Okay, here we go. I just like the sound of that minor 4 coming back to 1. It's just the most beautiful sound in the world. And then the next time the same passage shows up, I use A7 here. So I'm using 2 different chords in this measure. Here I have C minor. Here I have A7. It's the same melody, right? Bum, bum, ba-da-da-dum, bum, bum, ba-da-da-dum. And usually it's the same chords both times, but I wanted 2 different chords and I didn't want the usual chord. So this time I used a minor 4 chord. This time I used a dominant 7th 2 chord. It's pointing to this 5. This A7 is resolving to that D over there, is what's happening. It's really, if we think about this A minor 7 to D7, that's really just one big D7 that got split up. So this A7 is really leading to this big D7 here. So anyhow, those are the harmonic techniques I'm using. I use the same harmonic techniques over and over again because I know this language really well. There is just so much music written that uses this language. And I should mention that, sometimes I use the word jazz in association with this harmonic language, but there's nothing jazz specific about it. And I make that point a lot. And it bears repeating here in the context of Christmas music, because when you think about it, the Christmas songs we know mostly fall into 2 categories. There's the ones that are 100 years old, like this one, or Silent Night, or O Little Town of Bethlehem, all the traditional hymns. And then there's a whole lot of music that comes from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, basically. Winter Wonderland, right? Let It Snow. All those kinds of songs were really in this same harmonic language. They're not written by actually, I'll Be Home for Christmas, and yeah, some of those there were Christmas songs. Irving Berlin, of course, White Christmas. A lot of the music that is a lot of this familiar Christmas music comes from the early 20th century, early to mid 20th century, using this harmonic language, of 2-5-1 chord progressions, of minor 4 chords, of passing diminished chords. This exact language that I spend so much of my time thinking about and talking about, it's the language of a lot of these familiar Christmas songs. So, all right. So, thanks for bearing with me as I go through this demonstration. But I wanted to show, like, this kind of goal that I had of creating an interesting arrangement with as little work as possible. Not little work on my part, but little work to put together. If someone wanted to sing this, really, one person has to learn a hard part. It's just this harmony part, and it's not even that hard. I think I can sing it. Bring a torch, see, I can't sing half that. Torch, Jeanette, Isabella. Bring a torch to the cradle, run. All right, see, I can sing that, and I'm not a singer, right? So that's like some of the hardest stuff in there as far as this chromatic business in here. So this is totally learnable, and then you can put something together with only one person learning a harmony part. And now I can certainly sing that. G, E, A, D, C, B, A sharp, A, D, G. Oh, question. Anyone here speak German? The reason I'm asking, and maybe it goes for other Germanic countries. I'm about to be teaching a sight singing class in the spring at a local university, and we are going to be using what I think of as the German names. Like this, I sang A sharp. We're going to sing that as ace. And I don't know, like, I've used the German spellings of sharps. I know it's well, actually that one's a little weird, but like G sharp would be G-I-S. And we're pronouncing that Gis. And I have no idea if that's really how that's pronounced in German. So I'd be kind of curious from anyone, and there's other people I can ask about that. But if someone wants to tell me, do really, so we're going to sing this as B A D G, and we'll also use solfege. But when we're singing note names, um, that's how we're going. And this is F, B, B, A, D, D, C is how we pronounce this. Yeah, geese. And so geese. Yeah, that's anyhow, this is how we're doing it. It comes from the Walden School, the method that we're using. So the Walden School is in uh, United States. So they're using some concepts that come from Europe, but they're using kind of American pronunciations, I guess. All right, so that was my demonstration there, and feel free to continue to ask me questions or anything about it. But meanwhile, I'm going to jump over and start looking at some of the stuff that was created here in the music masterclass. So I'm going to put the link, as I always like to do, in here. So if anyone has music that you haven't submitted that you want to submit, you know where to be doing it. So I've been asking the last time, yeah, an H. Yeah, we're not even using H. So yeah, sorry, it's B for B sharp and Bess for B flat, and we don't have H's in this Walden School method here. So this link I just posted is the link to where the Music Masterclass group is on MuseScore.com, which I'm still thinking is like the best place where I can post music for where you guys can post music for me to comment on, because then it's all in one place and we can all see it and hear it, and it's really nice. So by posting to this group, we'll have that ability to all see things. So I'm going to pick a couple pieces here and that I think are interesting to talk about. And let's see. So this one, Dean, and Kika, I saw yours and I know I lost it. You didn't add it to the group, but I found it because you posted the link elsewhere. So I'm going to play this one here of Dean's, and he has some questions about adjustments of formatting, which I can talk about at some other point. But I'm going to try to focus more on the music here. But let's hear. Wow, that is really nice. I hadn't actually listened to it all the way through before. I had only listened to like the first half of it before. That is a really, really nice piece. Good job, Dean. So, yeah, I want to talk about a few different things in this, and let's see if I can download it. I should have downloaded it already, but sometimes I just am juggling so many balls that I'm not always keeping up with where I want to be. Courses. All right. This way I can easily open it in MuseScore. So one of the things, actually, while I'm looking at Bring a Torch for a second here, the fact that there is this time signature change in it um, is worth mentioning here. Like the piece is mostly in 6/8, right? But there's like that one place in the piece where there was an extra um, 9/8 measure, and that is really like one extra beat. That happens, and there's nothing wrong with that happening in music. And I should mention in that context that Bring a Torch, Jeanette Isabella, it doesn't have that, but it's got these nice 4-measure phrases. And then the first time I really sat down to play it, I realized it's really weird in that starting from here, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now that sixth measure didn't have to be there, but it kind of does, right? So this piece, it doesn't have an odd time signature change, but it does have an odd phrasing change, a 5-measure phrase. And then what's basically a 5-measure phrase, but you really need to make it 6 to feel like you had enough time to get to the top. Those sorts of things happen. And so in this case, I think there's a similar thing. There's like getting, starting a new verse, and this O just needed a whole beat to itself. So, that kind of stuff happens, and it's perfectly fine when it does. So I'm going to actually, I need to, so you may, if you saw my cafe yesterday, you know that there's a, this beta version of MuseScore 3.6 that I am actually using here, and I want to be using it so I can find out if there's any bugs. If this thing crashes in the middle of demonstration, then we'll know why. So there's a lot of really, really nice things to talk about on this piece, and I'm going to try to show some of these things. So first of all this little figure. So I love this figure, and I love how it's used as an organizing figure throughout the piece. The fact that it shows up in many places in the accompaniment. And it's one of these things where the accompaniment is in some places based more exactly on what's happening rhythmically in the melody, but mostly it's not, right? Mostly it's different rhythms in the accompaniment, so it's filling in gaps, which is really nice. It's like, so we have bum ba bum ba bum bum, but the accompaniment goes ba 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 ba, and so the end result is we have something on every eighth note. Boom bum 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 bum. So we have something on every single beat, every single eighth note beat here, which is nice. So it's not like you have to always have something on every beat, but it is one of the reasons why it's worth going out of your way to create accompaniment for something that's basically a 4-part hymn, right? This is a 4-part hymn, and it could have just been that, right? I could mute the piano part and it would sound lovely, I'm sure. Right? That sounds just lovely without the piano. But the piano is doing more than just doubling what's in the voices, because that's the traditional chorale style of accompaniment, where you basically just support the voices by playing the same thing that they're doing. Traditional, it's what a lot of people do. But it's that much more interesting when when the accompaniment part really is adding something. So yeah, and we can talk offline, Dean, or maybe leave some comments on your score with more questions about what your formatting is, and I can get to that offline. So yeah, and I just love how that little figure comes back again here. And again, this fills in those missing beats, but this time it's filling it in with that 16th pattern instead of just the 8th note pattern, which is really nice. And I see here now that he's got the chord symbols in there invisible, which I didn't see online. And that's great because that helps me understand what's actually happening. So he's got this diminished chord here, an E diminished, that's approaching the F. And so that's like the 7 chord in the key of F. And the F is itself an F7 that's not in our key of E flat, but it's the 5 chord in B flat, right? It's a secondary dominant. He's really doing a great job of using this exact harmonic language that I have been talking about. So I really love this deceptive kind of resolution here. We usually think of a deceptive cadence in terms of 5 going to 6. Here it's 4 going to 6. But it's the same thing. 4 can really go anywhere. 4 doesn't need to go anywhere in particular. But I've got a 2 chord here, or Dean has a 2 chord here. Really, this could just as easily have been a 5 chord. In fact, if I changed this bass note here to a B flat, the point I want to make, and this is one that I don't hear made very often, the difference between 4 and 5 is not all it's cracked up to be. In other words, the original chord here was an A flat chord, A flat, C, E flat, and also a G, right? So it's a major 7th chord. And the melody note has that major 7th. By the way, the traditional way that you would write this is with either a capital M or an MA or MAJ, not so much the sharp 7. That's not. There might be some countries in which that's used, but that's not the usual way a major 7th chord is written. It's just MA is what I would be recommending. Yeah, MA is what most publishers are moving towards these days, but you'll still see capital M, capital MAJ. You'll see all sorts of different variations. Anyhow, this chord here, A flat, C, E flat, and then maybe the G, that's an A flat major chord. That's the 4 chord. But all I have to do is change that note to B flat. And now all the meanings of these same notes change. That was a root 3rd, 5th, and major 7th. But now the C is like a 9th on the chord. E flat is a 4th on the chord. G is a 13th on the chord. A flat, which was our root, is now the 7th of our chord. This is now a B flat 7 chord, but with an added 9th and an added 13th, and a suspension, the 4th instead of the 3rd. It's basically 5 sus 4. So the difference between the 4 chord and the 5 chord isn't so great. If you change the root, if you change the root of the 4 chord to be a 5, to be scale degree 5, it basically sounds like a 5 chord now. It's just a 5 chord with some color tones and a suspended 4th. So that, when I talk about this deceptive resolution from 5 to 6, even though he didn't really have a 5, he had a 4, sonically, it's a lot closer than you might think. We make this big deal about, 4 to 1 is a plagal cadence and 5 to 1 is an authentic cadence. But realistically, they're more interchangeable than you might think. There's a lot of situations in which you can replace a 4 chord with a 5 chord and totally get away with it because they both lead to 1, and a lot of the same melody notes are still going to work over it. So, yeah, 251, change your life. All right, that's beautiful. Yeah, changed mine too. But yeah, it's a powerful thing. So, but yeah, this deceptive resolution into the 6th, beautiful thing. And also the way you have it voiced, you have that 9th, the 9th, the D coming down to C, and the 4th F coming down to the E flat. That's also in the melody there, right? This is just really lovely. Yeah, I just hear that over and over again too. This. And then we're back into our main melody. So one thing, Dean, you call this an arrangement. I am not familiar with this. So this, I'm going to assume, is a hymn. that is traditionally, I don't know if I don't know anything about it. So you might have to tell me a little more background about whether the melody already existed and you provided the chords, if this 4-part arrangement already existed, you provided the piano part, if it really had that 9/8 measure in there, or if that's your addition. I'm kind of curious about all of these things here. So this section here, this is a nice little descending bass line here. Boom, boom. And it works really well exactly as it is, but I want to try something because I'm really kind of curious. When this situation happens, this D you have here is the major 7th of that E flat major chord. There's another chord that fits this sequence really well in a lot of other situations. I'm basically I'm walking down from 1 to 6. And I'm walking it down in the bass, 1, 7, 6. But there's a different way of doing that when it works with the melody, it works really, really well. And what it is instead of a D, I'm going to go down with a D flat. All right, I'll have to change all my other Ds to D flats also. And so the reason this works is the chord you had before was an E flat major chord, right? An E flat major chord with that major 7th. By changing that D to D flat, you would say, oh, maybe I've made an E flat dominant 7th, but no, not really, because there's no actual E flat in here. If there had been, I would get rid of it. There's not an E flat, right? There's no E flat anywhere in here. So really that was more of a G minor that you had going. But what this is now is a G diminished, or more particularly G half diminished, which would lead really nice to that C, really nicely to that C. So that would give you that effect of a 2, 5. That gives you that circle of fifths thing. So in order for that to really sell that, though, I do want there to be a 7th on that chord. So I'm going to let this alto take that, even though it's going to have it later. I'm going to let it have it here too. And I want to hear what this is going to sound like here. Does that sound familiar? It should. It's a common type of chord progression. Yeah, it really worked well here, just as the D natural did. But I like showing people options for things. So yeah, I agree that extra space on that O really made a lot of sense there. So anyhow, that's this pattern when you're walking down from 1 to 6. Walking down diatonically is one way of doing it, but also walking it down using this, so that instead of coming to 6, instead of just walking down diatonically to the 6, this is basically now what is a 3 chord, but a half diminished 3 chord. So it's leading to 6 by the circle of fifths. And when it works with the melody, it's beautiful. I can just hear that all day too, right? Going back to what you had originally, is this. That works just as well too. This is just basically a minor 3 chord instead of the half diminished 3 chord. But that bass line, instead of ba da dum ba ba da dum ba is the changed version. It's just a slightly different descending bass line. All right, then and this little really quick passing chord in there is really nice. This little A natural that we hear. Now, I will say that A natural, while the piano is still ringing the A flat, is slightly problematic. I worry about that, maybe more than I should, but if you're going to have a passing chord in the voices there, you do want to ask yourself how noticeable the clash between that A natural and that A flat is going to be. So it's not when I just listen to it, but it is definitely worth asking yourself that. Yeah, it doesn't bother me, and I certainly wouldn't have wanted my left hand on the piano to have to get that A natural there in octaves. Now, what I might have thought about doing is put a single note here that would complement the thing, like maybe let it be the E flat, like this, so that I'm not hearing this whole heavy passing bass tone, but I'm no longer clashing. Let me see if I like that. Yeah, maybe, but it wasn't a problem before. But it is the sort of thing to watch out for. Now, this is a really nice passage in here because you've got this. And again, I don't know the piece, and I guess this is probably how the piece goes. But it's got this kind of syncopated, repeating figure in here. And now you're bringing it in with this other voice on here. And again, if this is your addition to the piece, it's marvelous. And even if it's not your addition to the piece, it's marvelous. Having this once you've established these ding dongs, and maybe the ding dongs are your addition, and this is the what was normally written. But the way these fit together is really really nice. Just catching up on the comments. Something happened right there I want to talk about in a second. All right, so yeah, so thanks for the background on the piece. That's really really good. And yeah, so if you're orchestrating this piano part, Gijs is asking, um, then you probably these octaves would probably be really just the same note. This would be written for cello, and then the bass would sound an octave lower, and you'd have this, and you do the same exact thing. In fact, I would worry about it more if it were orchestrated, frankly, than on piano. One of the reasons why I could get away with that on piano is this A flat starts to die away the moment you hit it. By the time you're two-thirds of the way into that A flat chord, the sound of the A flat has diminished greatly just because of the way a piano works. If this were on organ, that A flat would be that much more prominent. In fact, let me change that sound to organ just so you can hear the difference that might make. So if I change that to, let's change it to church organ, shall we? Yeah, it's still it. I can't say that I really noticed the change. Um, but definitely this note would be still sustaining while this note happened. I think part of the problem was when I changed to organ, it drowned out the voice. And that's how I got away with it in that case. But if this was cellos here, so let's make that change. Why not? Let's this time choose cello. Here we go. So I have to listen for it, and I'm still not convinced it's a problem. But it is this. It's because of how fast it goes by. It might not be a problem, but it's definitely the thing that you pay attention to at a slower tempo. It might more be. So I don't want to dwell on that anymore. So I saw a question about my works being published, and so it's funny. I've never really sought that out. I've composed a lot of pieces like as commissions for groups that have been performed and things like this. But as far as like approaching a publisher and say, "Hey, I want to put out a book of my music" or something like that, I haven't really done that. Many of you have seen my composition reunion. That was the demonstration piece for MuseScore. That already got it in front of more eyes than most published music has ever been. So in that sense, I'm known a bit as a composer. People in the jazz world may know this book here. The real book is the most popular fake book in the jazz community. I didn't actually work on that volume one, but I did work on volume two and volume three and volume four, not as a composer, but as an editor, as someone transcribing the songs, choosing which chords. I wasn't going out of my way to reharmonize them. I wanted to pick the chords that I thought most jazz musicians would want to use on them. So I've definitely experienced working with publishers, producing music for publication, and so forth. Anyhow, that's my answer to that question. So yeah, right at the point where I stopped, I felt like my ear heard something that sounded a little funny. So I want to check this out. Yeah. Okay, what is that sound right there? Somehow my ear heard a note that there it is. I don't know that that's what you wanted, but what happened is this is what my ear heard. Oh, yeah, other things are moving too. So it's basically the amount of time I got to hear that A before the B flat 7 came in and kind of counteracted it. It created a situation in which I'm hearing that A flat while I'm hearing I'm hearing that sorry. I'm hearing the A natural. Wait a minute. Oh, that is an A flat. What? See, now I'm second guessing myself again. Maybe that's what it is. Okay, that is an A flat. Okay, I see. So that's what I'm hearing. It's this A flat that's coming in while that A natural is still sounding. You can get away with things like that, but I heard it immediately. So the other thing I saw on paper, right? This clash I only saw on paper. I didn't hear it. I saw this A natural against that A flat, and bells went off because I was just dealing with the same thing in my Jeanette Isabella. And actually, it wasn't that. I was working on a similar one for Silent Night, where I kind of heard I saw something like that happening where I wanted a passing chord happening, but I didn't want the bass note to have to change. And I had to ask myself, could I get away with it? And so here I felt like this, I saw on paper, it was possibly a problem. My ear didn't hear it. This one I didn't see, I heard. Yeah, so there's confusion between the second half of this measure and the first half of this measure about when does that chord actually change. And I recognize that this is going to happen because of the nature of the line. We have this sort of syncopated ding dong while the piano is doing that original boom bum, and we have this ding dong, and then this one's on the beat. So all these things happening at different rhythms, it's going to be tricky to get the notes, to get the chords to change cleanly. There's going to be places where things overlap a little bit and possibly cause some problem. I would just say it would probably be possible to create the overlap in a way where I didn't hear it. I don't know the answer. I don't have a ready-made answer for you, but I can say that is something you want to watch out for. When you have this much different rhythms and tied over notes happening, yeah, there's going to be a note tied over and the chord's going to want to change and something is going to be left over and it's going to potentially be a little problematic. And you get to you get to figure out how to deal with it. So I will just say I could hear it, and if that makes you want to change a couple notes in there, by all means. But on the other hand, as with any dissonance, it's over in 2 beats, and we eventually arrive on the 1 chord together, right? And we all arrive on the 1 chord, and we're happy. So here, by the way, this is the exact same passage we had before, right? That descending line from E flat to C. Here, I would not try to change anything about it, that D flat, because I don't think I would want to hear this melodic line doubling that D flat. And I certainly wouldn't want to hear it clashing either. I mean, maybe I would. Maybe it would be okay, but I'll let you think about that. But I think it's nice to have the same musical idea presented 2 different ways, right? It could be presented one way, one part of this in one part of the song, and differently in another part of the song, just like in my Jeanette Isabella thing, where I two different ahs, or hush hush is the other lyric there. 2 different voicings of what originally was the same thing, 2 different harmonizations. All right, so then going on, there you've got the minor 4 chord, which is the same chord that I talked about in Jeanette Isabella also. Again, I'm hearing a note that's not in it, and it's the piano part here, the C. Is it only that one? I think that's only that one. In any case, that's something else to watch out for, that the piano part had a C natural while the alto part here had a C flat. And so that's something else to sort of watch out for and see if, yeah, and that to me fixes it there if you wanted to just do that. And then, so you've got the same minor 4 chord again happening here, and this time this is really unexpected. So I talked about how that major 4 to 1, I mean major 4 to 6 is a deceptive resolution. The minor 4 to 6 is that much more so. I've almost never seen that. Minor 4 I see go to 1, minor 4 I see go to 3. Minor 4 to 6 is like, there's relatively few times when I've ever encountered that chord progression. But it's really nice, and it gives you this C, the B natural to C. I call it B natural, even though it's C flat, right? But C flat to C, it creates this really interesting motion. So I really like how that all fits together, and it really is this little unexpected sound to me. Now, as a pianist, I don't know. So Dean, I don't know if you play the piano. I put my piano playing hat on. So when I think about writing for singers, I always write what I think is going to be singable, and then I'm surprised at how hard it is because I don't really have a lot of insight into it. Although sometimes I think something is going to be hard, and then people nail it, and I'm like, oh, okay. Piano, though, I actually play the piano. So this, I can tell you that playing these parallel thirds moving up like that, we don't have that many fingers, right? So we can't play that other than having to pick up our hand and move it mid-phrase. So playing that phrase at that tempo, it's not going to be as easy or smooth as MuseScore plays it when a real pianist plays this. And there's that finger again. And then you've got that really nice key change going in here. Okay, so here's a notational thing, and I don't know if Simon is here watching or not, but I'll put this out for anyone. These two beats look a little strange to me because I'm seeing the natural on the bottom note and not on the top note. Now, I understand why. This already is a B natural because earlier in the measure. This already is an A natural because earlier in the measure. It's a little off-putting to me to see this, so what I might possibly do is put a courtesy accidental on it. Which, by the way, for those, if Dean, I think you said you saw the cafe. This is one of the improvements in 3.6. When you put parentheses around this courtesy accidental, they will space themselves better. So normally parentheses aren't needed on courtesy accidentals and are, sort of frowned upon for normal courtesy accidentals. But this is a special one. This is like confirming an accidental that was already in the same measure. This is a situation where you might do that. I don't know if it's worth doing or not, but I thought I would bring it up there. So yeah, I would say everything else that I've seen in the piano part, nothing looks like it would phase me. I mean, yeah, the fingering in there might be a little awkward, but whatever. That's our job. We work those things out. So I wouldn't worry about that. And then, so now I really like this whole a cappella section. Beautiful. There's that. Okay, so this minor chord, so this isn't a minor 4 chord, this is a minor 1 chord, right? So we're going from a C major 4 to 1, and then minor. That's just so nice, that change from major to minor. We hear this all the time, 4 going major to minor. Because that's where that minor 4 chord comes from. But having 1 go minor, this is the opposite of what we usually hear, that Picardy third thing, a minor key that ends on a major thing. And the reason this happens is because we're really setting up, here comes an E flat chord, right? it's borrowed this whole passage there, that E flat major. You're calling this an E flat major, but there's still a C on the bottom, so I really still hear this as C minor personally. But yeah, this is kind of floating back and forth between C major and C minor. The C minor and that E flat or C minor chord, they are coming from the key of E flat, and then we have a secondary dominant, 5 of 5. That's all nice. Okay, so this is really, really beautiful, and I just want to get inside this a little bit. And yeah, I'm going to spend a lot of time on this piece because it's a great piece. It's I love the scale of it, and that it's short enough that I can get through it, and yet meaty enough that I can talk about a lot of stuff. And Dean is right here, and that's my favorite stuff to talk about. Then, so we've got this A minor. This chord here that you're calling F sharp. So I think so again, this sharp 7 isn't really a thing notationally, but what it really is an A major chord. You're calling it an F sharp minor maybe because of the F, but this is actually an F natural. Oh no, you're not calling F sharp. So I don't hear this as any kind of F chord. That this feels like a passing chord. I really hear this as an A7. And that's why it goes so nicely to a D chord, because it's really, this is an A7 chord going to D. And although you say D minor, remember what I said about open fifths, that the third, the ear is going to fill in? My ear didn't fill in an F natural. My ear filled in an F sharp. Why is that? I'm not sure. I think. Oh, I'll tell you why. I can't even tell you why my ear is filling in an F sharp, but it just is. That's all I can say. It's just so lovely in here. It doesn't really matter what my ear fills in, and maybe the ambiguity of it is part of what makes it so lovely. And so I kind of don't. I'm just going to put an F natural in for a second. Okay, that sounds. Yeah, maybe my ear did fill in an F natural, but I do want to hear it with the F sharp. Whoops, I must have changed something else accidentally. Maybe my ear didn't fill it in that way. I don't know. I wasn't sure what my ear was filling in, to be honest. All right. So this is all just so nice. And it's all mostly diatonic, right? Other than these secondary dominants, but just the treatment with the voice leading and the textures and the different rhythms that are happening, right? Instead of having just pure chorale style, having these bottom voices have the long notes, while the top voices have more chorale style. But even then, not totally, because you've got a moving parts in the soprano and then a moving part down in the alto. And actually, what is this? 5 voices, right? At this point, you have 3 voices on the top staff and 2 voices on the bottom. So now it's a 5 voice texture, which is also just really making it just sing. This is essentially that passage that I talked about before, Dean, right? This is one walking down. And here you're giving me both of them. You're giving both the B natural and the B flat. So this is the same thing in the key of E flat, right? It was E flat, D, C, and then I said, oh, try E flat, D flat, C. Here you have C, B, you have C, B, A. So same thing, 1, 7, 6, but this time you are giving me the flat 6 at the end of the measure. So that's actually kind of really nice how you're giving them both there, and that totally works also. But don't think I wasn't going to notice this one. The German 6th chord, right? This is the augmented 6th chord that we talked about, and it's doing exactly what German sixth chords do. It's resolving to a 1-6-4 chord, A flat 7 going not directly to G, but going to C chord in second inversion. So people who don't know German sixth, don't know augmented sixth chord, if I called this a tritone substitution, A flat 7 for D7, maybe some jazz people would then be on board, but this is definitely a more advanced harmonic technique, and it's the sort of thing my harmony and chord progressions course works its way up to, and then covers in quite some depth. So it's just so nice, and it's like, yeah, it's like I just love it when that sort of opportunity works itself in to get that. For people who aren't aware, if I just change that F sharp to an F natural, now I have a minor 4 chord. That's where it comes from. It's really a minor 4 chord, an F minor chord, F, A flat, C. It's a minor 4 chord in which the root got raised up a step so that the F sharp could go. We could have this line that goes F, F sharp, G. It creates this really interesting voice leading, and then creates this sound that sounds like an A flat 7. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful harmonic technique. And then we get to return to the original theme. So, oh yeah, see, I haven't even really, I've only paid attention to the text a little bit when, like, I noticed the O was what kind of made this extra beat make, like, it made so much sense. And of course I noticed all the ding dongs in here. And so where was I? We just got through with this part. Oh yeah, no, I definitely noticed that the lyrics in this part, the talking about the length of the age of peace and sorrow ceasing, this totally worked for this to be this this gentler texture there. So yeah, absolutely agree. And now we get to a more joyful, less contemplative thing. Okay, I'm gonna stop on this part here because we're almost at the end, and obviously this is the only piece I'm gonna be talking about today because it was just so meaty, as I said, so much stuff to dig into here. But it's just so lovely. I'll post some comments to some other stuff in the coming days also. But I just want to talk about this ending passage, because this ending passage is just really nice. I'm not going to analyze it harmonically because I don't know that that makes sense as much as just paying attention to the fact that there's interesting diatonic motion happening, because we have this repeating figure in the right hand of the piano that really keeps saying E flat while the bass line is doing other things, and the bass line and the voices are doing these things. It's really about moving chords in parallel, and the voicing here is this really cool fourth based voicing, right? These are all fourths. E flat to A flat is a perfect fourth, then A flat to D is an augmented fourth, and then D to G is a perfect fourth. Here, they're all perfect fourths. B flat, because basically anytime you have the A flat to D interval, that's an augmented fourth, but all your other fourths are going to be perfect. So from F to B flat to E flat to A flat, or G to C, F to B flat, these are all perfect fourths. So this shape of moving, the wonderful thing about this stack of perfect fourths is that it's slightly dissonant because perfect fourth is not as consonant as a third. And also, when we stack a couple of them up, we're going to get a seventh, right? From the B flat to the D is going to be a seventh, or F to the E flat is a seventh. And now, again, this A flat is a seventh above that B flat, or the G a seventh above the A flat. So it creates dissonance, but it's dissonance that's all diatonic within the key. And by moving it around, you're basically establishing the key of E flat without being too specific about what the chord is. The first chord tone we hear, the bass tone we hear, C minor, sets our expectation, but then the lowest chord tone that we hear is an E flat, or the lowest bass tone is an E flat. So probably my ear starts hearing it changing from C minor to E flat at this point, but I really don't hear chords happening here. I just hear this wash of E flat major. With this interesting parallel voicing thing going on. So let's just hear that passage because it's nice. Yeah. So yeah, this passage is just this really nice kind of confirmation of our key that doesn't do anything particularly as far as chord motion. It's reminiscent of a Baroque technique of a pedal point at the end of a fugue, where the pedal would just go down. The organist puts their pedal down on the tonic, and then does all this frilly stuff on top. That's not about the chords. It's just confirming the key somehow. And this isn't pedal point because the bass is what's moving, although it sort of is pedal point. It's almost like this is functioning as an upper pedal. Ding, 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 ding. And then we come to this B flat 7 chord here, which I swear my ear was hearing a color tone on here. Oh, it is. There's a ninth on it. Yeah, okay. I knew I heard that. And then 5, and then coming down by way of this lovely flat 13th, the 13th, the flat 13th. So that's a really nice jazzy sound. And then this lovely, okay, we've had all those ascending little scalar passages, and then to end it, hey, let's come back down. Done. Love it. And he ends on a 6th chord with a 6th on it. He's been using those throughout, I think, in this type of texture. Right. Yeah, 6th chords. Well, this was the minor chord, but whatever. He's been incorporating these color tones. So anyhow, there was so much to talk about on that piece, and I really just enjoyed it so much. And oh, so Hindemith. That's where you know that from. So yeah, I know it from jazz people. But Hindemith, I know also uses that sound, as do any number of other 20th century and later composers. I associate it with McCoy Tyner, is the person that I know it from, jazz pianist. So anyhow, I hope that people have really enjoyed this session as much as I have. And, we saw my nice, simple little piece, and then we get to see this lovely, really nice arrangement of a hymn, another hymn I wasn't familiar with, but this really building this beautiful structure out of it. And yet we can still talk about all the wonderful details that are happening one measure at a time, or just, one chord voicing at a time. So thanks so much for being here. And yeah, just keep uploading your music, and I'll get in and try to post comments, and we'll keep this thing going. And again, next week, Christmas Eve, I'll take off, and then New Year's Eve also. But I'll catch you all again in January. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here, being a part of this. If you're not already signed up for the course, got to do the little commercial at the end. Be sure that you actually do that, so you're on the mailing list and have a place to post stuff as needed. Music master class. There it is. Okay, there's the link to where you would go sign up. So again, thank you so much, everyone, and I will see you in 3 weeks. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, and Happy Holidays in general. So thanks again, everyone, and see you next time.